Hi, this is David again. I'm going to do a video on the temple ordinances that are magic and secretive in the Mormon Church. They're really not much anymore. If you go on the internet, you can get an entire word-by-word video of the Mormon endowment, whatever that is, ceremony. I kind of wanted to just give my perspective and my views, since I was a Mormon for 50 years and active for 50 years and married 3 times, once in the Manti Temple, once in the Washington D.C. Temple, and once in the Salt Lake Temple. So I have a little bit of experience concerning the temple ordinance. I was also a veil worker. There's a couple of, Mormons have, just like attorneys and other businesses, they have kind of secret words. If you can hit the secret words, they know you're one of them. I was a veil worker at the Los Angeles temple for about a year. And in the temple, there's ordinance workers. They're the higher-ups. Then there's veil workers. We're kind of the middle class, and then I guess there's some patrons. I don't know. They have all kinds of silly words in there. Matron of the temples, and then they have the temple president, and he has his first, I guess, and second counselors, and it just goes on and on. This hierarchy is nauseating. They always have simple, sacred, secret names in front of their name. President, first counselor, second counselor, matron, mother of the ward, bishop, stake president, temple president. It goes on and on. So anyway, let me just give you my perspective of the temple ordinance. The first time I was exposed to it was in Manti, Utah, their temple down there. It's a pretty little temple. It's got a beautiful staircase inside. And I married my first wife, Janice, there. And I have to be really truthful that other than the, and now I'm using my words, I'm not extrapolating this across, anti-Mormon this, and oh, the devil's making him speak, and they have a gun to his head, and no, none of that. I'm just telling you my feelings, my experience. Wearing the temple garment was a little stupid. I worked construction a lot of my younger days as a glazer on high-rise apartment buildings in Los Angeles, and I laid on the concrete and I ran drills into steel all day long and lifted large panes of windows and built the frames for them, and wearing garments was a bitch. Sweating like a pig and then having that wear garments to get Jesus points. I had a rash on both sides of my crotch that at night, when I came home from Los Angeles to my home, I had to take Vaseline and cake it on the inside of my legs so the next morning I could go to work. But I never took my garments off. Boy, you do that and you are going to hell. You're afraid, you're intimidated, you're controlled. And so, my wife wore her garments, and together we looked like Minnie and Mickey Mouse. It looked stupid. I tried to marry attractive girls, and when they draped themselves with Omar the tent maker's Mormon garments, they looked like crap. They looked like crap. But if you want to go to Jesus, you got to look like crap, according to the Mormons. So I did wear the garments there. In fact, I did wear them all of my adult life until I left the church. Once I left the church, I did a Mexican hat dance around a group of garments. Let me also mention later on, when I was working up against reflective glass windows that I was putting in as a glazer, the temperatures could be 120, 130. And finally, towards the end of that construction period of my life, I took my tops off. I left the bottoms on. It didn't used to be that you could separate them. But now Jesus came down to the prophet and said, oh, by the way, let's let him have a bottom garment and a top. And that was convenient for me because I just had to take my shirt off to continue to work and support my family. Felt like shit. I felt like, you know, Jesus is going to throw me off the scaffold at any damn minute. But anyway, the other thing about garments is that they do wear out. They're like underwear. They do wear out. And women have to wear them under their underwear and under their bras. Of course, women are second-class citizens in the Mormon cult. Always have been. Always probably will be. They have no authority. They have no say. And they have to wear all of their underwear over their garments. Hey, it's what Jesus wants. It's what Jesus wants. Let Jesus have it. You want your wife looking like that? Good. I don't. The other thing with garments is as they wear out, you are not allowed to just throw them away where someone can wash their car with garments. They're magic. They're magic to the Mormon people. Now the Mormon people will not use the word magic. They'll use the word sacred. And on the garments there's symbols like the cross and the square. There's one across each breast and one on the stomach. They're Masonic symbols. That, of course, Jesus came down to Joseph Smith and said, oh, by the way, when you do the endowment series, just copy the Masons. They kind of know what's going on. So you got to take scissors or a knife, and you got to cut out the markings of the garments. Oh, there's one on the knee, too, on the bottom garment. So you have to cut those out, make a hole in the garment. Then you can use them for whatever. You can use them for whatever you want. Now you have to take... I can't believe that I did this stuff. I am not seeing myself this stupid. But I was. You take that little garment cutting out, the symbols, and you put them in a tray, and you light them on fire. And I don't know. I don't know why they do that, but that's the way I was trained in that cult. That's what I did, and that's why I feel pretty silly. The other thing about the garment, let me just mention this in passing, if you live in Utah. Utah is still about 50-50 Mormon and non-Mormon right now, and it's getting bigger with more non-Mormons. But your police departments, your city courts, your attorneys, if you want to go against the Mormon church in Utah in the legal system, you might as well forget it. Totally forget it. You can't find an attorney that even, number one, will take your case, and number two, a judge that'll even hear it. So you have an interstructure system in the Utah and Mormon church that has been here since Brigham Young. And garments play a large part. Now again, the Mormons have things that are written, and you can read them, and they sound wonderful. But there's also doctrine that is below the radar. And it's as strong, if not stronger, than what is written. And in Utah, the sacred garment of the priesthood, I think that's what they call it. I call it magic underwear. If you go into court, you will see the judge's black robe. You don't see any garments on the judge. But, and I'm talking now from experience, I was in immigration court. I was trying to help a guy a couple of months ago not be deported. But in Utah, the judges post their resumes, and they'll say, Mission President, Philippines, State President, Virginia. So, you don't have to see their garments. They're Mormon. And most of them have been powerful Mormons. What do you do with your vagina? What do you do with your penis? I represent Jesus Christ. You're in trouble. Man, put a guy like that in a judgeship and expect a fair outcome. Most of you are way too young to remember Barney Fife on the Andy Griffith Show, but you know, Barney was always, he had to carry his bullet here in his pocket because he kept shooting himself in the foot. He was so stupid. You don't put a hard-nosed Mormon into a judicial position, but Utah does, because they hold the ace in every trial and in every presentation. When I when I went to the immigration court, I read the court rules. The judge didn't obey them. When I complained, and I complained in the Jordan School District when I sued them, and I said the judge is not impartial, he's biased. And they took it up to the next judge, and he served in the same state presidency as the judge I was complaining about. So, what was my decision? Screw you! Shut up and sit there and let them abuse you. I approve of him abusing you. I sat there, and they abused me, and they abused me. And finally, the immigration judge told me, you know, that pretty much I was going to be in contempt of court, and he was going to put me in jail. And he wanted me to resign because I made some comments about him being a Mormon, and he didn't like that. And boy, you make comments like that in a judicial setting, you're stupid. I was. I got out of there before I went to jail. And the garment is the secret to the judicial system in the state of Utah. I mentioned in one of my other videos that when Mormons hug you and embrace you and like you're their long-lost relative and love bomb you, they do that for a reason. They feel up your back, men and women, to see if they can feel the garment. If they can feel the garment, hey, you're in the cult, you're one of us, I'll do anything for you, you cover my back. Well, you go into a Mormon judicial system anywhere. I don't care if it's traffic court, I don't care if it's the DMV, the educational system, it doesn't matter. When you show up as the defendant, if you're not wearing the secret white shirt that you can see through, and you can see the tops of the temple garment and then its sleeves here, you're going to jail. You're nothing. You might as well just put your hands together for the cuffs and dress in a prison suit. I've seen it. I've lived it. I've been in this state for many, many years. I graduated from Brigham Young. I've been in Utah County. It's worse. Salt Lake County is a little bit safer for non-members. Utah County, don't even think about it. So, if you're sitting there as a defendant and you're there in a plaid shirt, or maybe you're there in a blue shirt or a red shirt with your suit and tie on, and they can't see your garments, that jury and that judge is going to be against you. Now they'll say, oh, that's not true. David's lying. We're objective here in Utah. Go down to Point of the Mountain, our prison. Ask who's a Mormon there, who's not. Do it yourself. I used to deliver at the prison. Pharmaceuticals. I know some of those systems down there. If you're not LDS, you're in prison. The judicial system is very similar to Oklahoma and Texas. You're not allowed to carry a gun under your seat of your car in Oklahoma or Texas, but everyone does. So when the police find it, if you vote Republican, if you're part of the militia, if you are a Baptist, if you are, one of them, they ignore the gun under your seat. So selective enforcement is very important in cult-driven societies. And so in Oklahoma, if you're one of the good old boys, you can carry a gun. No one's going to say anything. And if it goes to court, the judge is just going to say, it wasn't his gun, it was his brother's gun. Same way in Utah. You go to court, and you don't wear that white shirt, and you don't show those garments, that jury and that judge is going to look at you and go, see, he's in trouble because he didn't follow the gospel. The Lord is punishing him. He is, I love this particular phrase of the Mormon, he is kicking against the pricks. Well, I was taught in the Mormon church that, that's kind of like a cactus. You're kicking the sharp edges of a cactus, and when you leave the church, you'll be kicking against the pricks. Well, there's some good news about that, and there's some bad news about that. I have kind of, after I left the church, been kicking against the pricks. But they're not cactus plants. I don't want my videos to be crude and rude, and I don't want it, coming back and biting me on the butt. So there's some wisdom that I've learned over a lifetime. But the pricks I kick against, after I left the Mormon church, I'm going to leave to your imagination. I'm going to give you a hint. They wear white shirts and a tie. That's all I'm going to say. I've been kicking against the pricks for 10 years. So anyway, in the judicial system, the garments play a very, very important role of identification. Same way in the church. When you move to a new ward or a new state, if the bishop or stake president can see you wearing garments, they know, you're one of the in crowd and they can use you for a position, a teaching, or whatever. So Mormon garments have evolved from being all the way down to your knees and clear down to your wrist when I first was in the Mormon church, and then they tied up the front. And again, I don't want to be crude, but I want to be truthful. When you have underwear that ties every 5 or 6 inches, the little general may look out and see if there was a battle now and then, which they often do. Which reminds me, when I was a temple worker, a veil worker at the Los Angeles temple, we, in the middle of at the end of the session, the end of the indoctrination period, you gave your secret signs, tokens, and handshakes and symbols and words to a person that's hiding behind a curtain. Okay, even when I say that, I feel stupid. I feel embarrassed that I thought I was God. We were the veil workers, and we were representing God and allowing these people to come into heaven. Oh my God. I don't know. I just am amazed that I was that stupid. I'm amazed that I was that stupid. But anyway, one of the positions at the veil is I would put my hand through and they would give me the secret tokens and symbols on my knuckles and the patriarchal grip and sure sign of this. And I would, repeat back, what is that? And they would repeat back, and then they would have a little helper there, an old woman, in case they couldn't remember the whole thing. And then she would knock 3 times on the door thing that held the curtain, and I would say, what is wanted? And you got to go to the video and just look at it. It's silly, but to them it's sacred. Well, one of the positions was the 5 points of fellowship. Now again, look into your Mason history of the Mason organization, and you'll see Joseph Smith obviously plagiarized that and stole it from the Masons. So as I remember, the 5 points of fellowship, it was foot to foot, knee to knee, breast to breast, arm to back. That's how I remember it. Well, I knew the veil workers. I was one of the young ones. God, I was probably in my 30s. And, most of the guys there, if you take off in the middle of the day, they're going to be retired. And this was one of the few times that they could, take young girls in their arms, and all they had was a sheet between them, and act like God and be in charge of these young girls. And there was a female side and a male side, and some of the inappropriate people who complained about some of the old geezers over there on the women's side, they would not let them work the woman's side. They would have to go over and work with the males. Well, I was one of the privileged ones that got to work with the females because, it wasn't in my mind or head. I just did my job, and that was it. But it appears that the 5 points of fellowship began to turn into the 6 points of fellowship at the veil. The Mormon women, they're stupid, but they're not that stupid. So they made some kinds of complaints or some kinds of gestures or whatever to the authorities of the church that they don't like a penis hard as a rock sticking against them breast to breast. With a stranger. And an old man. I guess they're just kind of picky. I can't believe I used to believe this stuff. So the 6 points of fellowship finally died at the veil. I guess it went into where the gold plates went and the other magical things in the Mormon church. So now that ceremony skips that particular sexual encounter at the veil. Let me mention one more thing, that since I have been to the temple so many times when I was younger, that has changed. There's been several changes, because the old temple movie, they used to have a Baptist preacher in there, and Satan would say to him, you know, I will pay you well if you convert Adam and his posterity. Well, they took him out. They used to say then, I'll buy up popes, priests, and kings, and reign upon this earth with blood and horror. Well, I don't think the popes like that very much, so they took that out. It used to be that when you went in, the first part of the session, one of the promises, you always raise your hand, and they'll say to you, the ordinance worker will say to you, you will obey the law of chastity. That was one of the rules in there. And he'd say, bow your head and say yes. And in other words, don't you say a word. You just bow your head and say yes. Well, God, that seemed to me like a Nazi concentration camp, but, you know, I didn't want to get shot, so I just bowed my head and said yes, like the rest of the fools. And one of the things, the law of chastity, that you will have no sexual intercourse with anyone other than your lawfully wedded husband or wife. Well, that phrase changed, because it used to be that the women would raise their arms and say, I will obey my husband. I'm not going to go into the whole ritual. I will obey my husband. In other words, he is the final word in a Mormon household. It is not equal. It is not, she can be a counselor, and that is, you know, a person that has no power, no authority. If she wants to say something, hey, be my guest, say something. But she used to have to raise her right hand to the square and promise to obey her husband and bow her head and say yes. Oh, the men love that. That was a good part. Joseph and Jesus know what they're doing. Well, you decide for yourself. There used to be, and this is even worse. I'm going to end this video with the worst part of the temple. When you go into the temple, there's lockers. And they all have locks on them in the temple. And one of the temple questions that the bishop and the stake president ask you is, are you honest in your business dealings with your fellow man? And you have to say yes, or you're not going to be in the temple. But you go in every temple, and every temple has a locker for your clothes. And it has a lock on it with your watch and your wallet. Yeah, the Mormons don't trust the world, because the Mormons don't trust Mormons. They'll steal from you quicker than a Gentile. So you go into the locker room, and you undress. Naked! I don't mean to underwear and bra. I mean bare-ass naked, like you were born. Okay? And they've changed this a little bit, I've heard. I haven't been since this has changed. But when I went, we had a sheet that the head was cut out of. They didn't call it that. They called it a shield. Like you're fighting and you have a shield. I guess the word meant it shielded your privates from hanging out to the entire group of 100 people walking around in there. So they put this shield on you. You can see through the sides of the shield, so the little general, he can salute you anytime. They take you into the washing and anointing room. Now, I have to admit here, the women do get to go in with women, or ordinances, or anointings, and the men go in with the men. So the men aren't playing with the women, but that doesn't make it much better. So you go in there naked as a jaybird, other than the shield, and this old geezer, he's saying to you, you're blessed, and he takes this oil and he puts it on your forehead, that you'll be a king, that you're better than everybody else. And then he starts playing with your boobs and puts oil on them and goes, you're the chosen generation, and you're clean from the blood of this generation. And then he takes your navel, and I'm going, whoa, is he going to keep going? Well, he stopped at the navel, and he jumbled a bunch of stuff. And then you go into the other room, take the shield off, and an old buzzard helps you put on your garments for the first time, or the next time if you're going through for the dead. And again, it's just unbelievable that these people have brainwashed such a substantial group of people to give them money for free, not account for it, go around naked, things you and I would never do in a million years in public. I mean, I go over to the gym and the pool sometimes, and you know, when I'm in there in the locker room, and 5 or 6 guys are taking their garments off, and I'm taking off my Calvin Klein underwear, then they look at me and go, "Oh, you're not a member." You're right, I'm not. Put your magic underwear on, because I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Well, it will protect me. So anyway, a long story short, the garments are a secret thing. They're just garments. You can put bullet holes in them, you can stab through them, they'll burn. But the Mormons don't believe that. The Mormons have taught, and among themselves and the authorities, saying, you know, there's these strange stories where the guy fell off of a cliff and his head and his arms were all broken, but not one broken bone under his garments. Someone's mother's, brother's, sister's aunt read in a magazine somewhere on vacation that story. Try to document those stories. Try to document those stories, and then, you know, put a video out that's prove that garments on Mormons are magic. So, the Mormon garment is obnoxious, it's hot, it identifies you in court, identifies you in the community, it identifies you, identifies you. Now, one thing I've learned about cults, now see, people keep writing me and making comments and whatever, all Mormons, no non-Mormons are contacting me. But one of the things I learned about cults is that if it's a serious cult and a man is a member of that cult, usually the small portion of the middle finger is cut off. And they'll tell you they're a butcher, or they were in the army, or they lost it cutting on a board in the kitchen or whatever. But it's a sure sign of a member, a high member of a cult. And the garments do the same thing for the Mormon people. And perhaps, I'm going to be honest, I think a skull cap and an apron on an Orthodox Jew, or black hats on a Mennonites or Quakers, does the same thing. I think that basically much of that are cult organizations using cult tactics to get money and to hold their members. So, you want to wear garments, pay your money, go to the mall. I don't. I love seeing my wife in the way, let me be politically correct. My wife, to me, is a beautiful girl, and I like to see her dressed beautifully. And garments are not my idea of a sexy, attractive woman. And if it is yours, God, have them put on 2 or 3 pairs of garments. Have them put it on their head, on their feet. Sleep with her that way and feel that, you know, Jesus and President Monson are in bed with you. Thank you very much.